Hello and welcome to this month's In the Community Special. I'm Jennifer Beck. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes, possibly better known in this area as FCA, has been a ministry since 1954. The organization's vision is to see the world transformed by Jesus Christ through the influence of coaches and athletes. And their mission is to lead every coach and athlete into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ and His church. That's according to their website, fca.org. It sounds like it's just a ministry about and for sports, right? Well, not so fast. FCA may gravitate toward sports, but it's a ministry open to all and one that is supported by many both in the sports world and outside of it. And it's making a major difference in the lives of so many individuals. Today, I'm pleased to introduce you to the FCA Northwest Ohio Multi-Area Director, Carl Whitlatch. Carl Whitlatch from FCA, the multi-area director for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Let's start out by let's just give a definition for those who may have forgotten or need to be reminded. Tell me what FCA is. What does it do throughout this region?
Sure. Well, as you know, sports has a pretty paramount place in our culture and society, and coaches and athletes in this area just have a lot of influence. And so Fellowship of Christian Athletes is a ministry that works with coaches and athletes to share the good news of Jesus. And even before we get going any further, I don't know if you know this, Jennifer, but Acts 44, this ministry here, is our local, like Northwest Ohio, largest supporter.
Oh, wow.
And so for that, I just want to say thank you. And I haven't seen it in one bit of literature or one announcement, but this ministry and what you do here has been a tremendous blessing for me and this ministry.
Well, that's awesome. And WOSN, our 24/7 sports station, we've had criticism in the past from people who say, why do you focus so much on sports? But it's like you just mentioned, there's such an open door to get the gospel to those who are in that sports world, which I know personally, I have been an FCA supporter for years, which is not why I brought Carl on to the show. I just really felt that God wanted him to be here to talk about the region because, yeah, sports is huge, and sports can be a God, small g, but yet when God is seen in sports, such incredible things can happen.
Sure. So I've been in this role with Fellowship of Christian Athletes only 1 year, but my whole life has been in ministry. So I started off for 5 years in New Knoxville as a youth minister and their first soccer coach, and I coached track there, and then went out to New York and New Jersey and did youth ministry out there with Young Life. And the whole time I was coaching a sport because it was an avenue into the schools to meet kids and to have influence in a place that I would never even be able to have influence. And so while I was doing that, I got to, whether it be coach soccer or swimming or track or whatever they need me for, I'm atypical of of a Fellowship of Christian Athletes staff person because I wasn't this big star. I consider myself a family reunion all-star, meaning at my peak, I could play against my grandmother and little nephews. But I loved kids, I loved sports, and it was just an avenue to reach the culture and to reach kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, what a great opportunity, really, like you said, to get in a way, and what an influence. I mean, we all know, I'm a sports mom. I mean, we know the value of a coach, the value of a mentor. And so as a coach, you had that opportunity, and then you bring in FCA, and suddenly you have student-led organizations with people like yourself or someone else there presenting the gospel right there in the middle of that public school.
Yeah, and for me, it just hit as such a perfect culmination of where I'd been in my life. For 20 plus years to be in ministry and to coach and to be on the youth ministry side, Fellowship of Christian Athletes has given me an opportunity to invest in and to pour into coaches and teachers that are already in the schools. Christians already in the schools and student athletes already in the schools, and to equip them to make a difference on their teams, in their schools, in their peer groups, and in their communities.
So I was just thinking about, as you're saying that, I was just thinking about the reach. It starts local, it gets huge. I mean, I was in Marion, Indiana for a college tennis tournament, staying at a bed and breakfast, sitting eating breakfast with the other people at the bed and breakfast, finding out that a woman from Kansas City was there who is the chaplain for the U.S. women's soccer team who does things with FCA. I mean, it's just when God gets started with things, God just never stops. It's incredible.
Yeah, I just feel it's such an amazing opportunity and organization that I got to be a part of, and that, like you said, it's been around 70 years. And it's in now over 115 countries, has over 20,000 active ministries. And in Northwest Ohio alone, which is what I oversee, like 23 counties, we have over 100 schools that have active FCA ministries in there. So if you can imagine 100 schools, that means we're working with hundreds of coaches, and thousands of kids are impacted by FCA every single week. And there was an old hair care commercial that's like, hey, I'm not only the president, I'm a client as well. I personally have 6 kids of my own. I have 5 teenagers and a 9-year-old. My oldest goes to Bowling Green, but I have 4 high school kids right now. And I entered into this job with my kids who go to New Bremen already being impacted by their local schools. Yeah. And so now my kids get to be leaders, and they get to stand up and share and advocate for their faith in front of their peers. And to me, I get to see the influence it has on my own kids.
Oh, yeah.
In one school, by their athletic director who leads it, and a track coach. And so my own kids are influenced, and I get to see, man, they get a difference made in their life. And this happens in schools all over the place, an individual kid after kid. I actually just talked to the Lima senior leader. He's a football coach and cross-country coach and indoor track coach yesterday, and he said, there was a kid that stopped by my classroom last week, and he said, hey, coach, I want to talk to you about something. Can I ask you a question about God? And I'm thinking, Fellowship of Christian Athletes is in the schools with people, loving Christians in the schools that they have as a resource. And so he said, this kid came up to me and asked me, and he said, is there something going on with your family or your siblings? And he said, no. And he goes, he had a tear in his eye, and he just wanted to talk to me. So I asked him what it was about, and I could pray for him. And I think that's one individual kid that goes to Lima Senior. But to have these influences in all of these schools where there's natural relationships through sports. Yeah. And so it's a sports ministry, but it is open to everyone. And that he said, he goes, actually at our school, there's more non-athletes than athletes that come to our meetings. Because
they're recognizing something's drawing them in. We know what that something is. Of course, God is drawing them in, but that's incredible. Tell me exactly, I mean, how does it work? So in each school, how does an FCA organization work within that school?
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier, it is really student-led and run and directed. And so at every school, we have these things called huddles, which is basically a certified ministry, which is a certified Bible study or devotion time. And they might have those before school or in the middle of the school day or after school. And at that time, usually student leaders are prepared to lead a little mixer, ask some questions, and lead a devotion. Lead something out of the Bible, a Bible study. And I talked to my son this morning who leads his, and he said, well, my job this week as part of the student leaders is to lead the application point. And so what they get to see is students like themselves up front leading their own huddles, we call them, they're small groups. And so when younger kids, middle school kids or freshmen or sophomores see upperclassmen talking about their faith, the upperclassmen are owning their faith and growing in it, and the underclassmen are saying, hey, it's okay for me to look into this. And so they look at scripture and they apply it. And there's always a leader in the school, maybe a coach that advocates for that club to be in existence in the schools. Now, huddles or our school ministries is one of the main ways we do it, but FCA has leagues, so we'll have a league with just all basketball teams and we'll run the league. Or we'll have club teams, like an AAU basketball team or a volleyball team. Up in Toledo, we have a softball team. And so it'll be an FCA leader leading that team, and they'll have devotions on that team, but they'll still compete at the highest levels. And so we have that as well. So it's in the schools, but it's also outside of the schools and clubs. And we also run camps. In fact, we have all ability camps. So FCA works with, we say, almost like cradle to grave.
Yeah.
And so it's every single sport that you can imagine, from kindergartners through professional athletes. Like, I have a cohort that has my job in Northeast Ohio, and he runs a league in inner city Cleveland for grade school kids. But also, as a part of his job, he's the chaplain for the Cleveland Browns and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Wow.
So if you can imagine that dichotomy of like the different people he gets to work with, and so FCA is the same way. So if there's leagues that can be run for elementary school kids, there's middle school huddles, which are inside the schools, or high school ones. Right now, we prominently have it in the schools, but there's it's limitless. And even FCA, we think of traditional sports, of basketball and football and volleyball. FCA says anything that we can use for God's glory, that we can name a sport to have an avenue to share the gospel, we're going to do.
Oh, I love it.
And so in Toledo, we have somebody that focuses on motocross, which I know nothing about. Next month, we have a hunting camp for fathers to take their sons to, their teenage sons.
Really?
And so it scans the whole spectrum of whatever we can imagine or dream as an avenue to get kids to be able to share like the truths about who Jesus is and his love for them.
And you mentioned the relationship between that student and that coach. And that's so key. I mean, Jesus is all about relationships. That's so important. So here on the sports field, kids are forming relationships. They're trusting their teammates. And then, like you mentioned, the teammates stand up and share the message of Jesus. I attended the Allen East Fields of Faith, I think it was last year. And that was what really struck me was, we had teachers, coaches there organizing in a sense, but it was the teenagers who stood up and gave the testimonies. And I wish I'd had that in high school. I went to FCA in college. I didn't have it in high school. And I know that personally my faith would have been better, I believe, if I'd had somebody my age saying, look, Jesus is real. He loves you. He cares for you. He's changed my life, and he can change your life too.
Yep. And it's not FCA that does it. FCA's vision is to see the world transformed by Jesus Christ through the influence of coaches and athletes. So FCA isn't the greatest organization in the world, but FCA's focus is the gospel and making sure kids know about God's love for them, period. So FCA doesn't change any lives. It is Jesus and Jesus alone that changes lives. But when you present that, and I think we are in this situation, like I've been working with FCA for only a year, but when I survey staff all around the country, they say we are in a revival, like something that they have never seen before.
Well, think about the Ohio State players.
Exactly.
And how vocal, and not just Ohio State, there's other, so many other sports athletes that are boldly speaking out.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think that's on the macro scale. You see this, and like, they're kids. I say they're kids.
Yeah.
We say, 20-year-olds aren't grown up. They don't mature until later. And you see these 18, 19, 20-year-olds, like Ohio State players. They'll stand for their faith stronger than anyone else you ever see.
Exactly, yeah.
And they have...
On national television. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
They have reached the pinnacle of their sport. They could not go any higher in the world's eyes. And they say, this isn't enough. There's something deeper than this. And then they use their platform. I mean, just yesterday I was looking through national syndications, and it was like USA Today, like MSN.com, the broadcasters after the national championship game.
Yeah, yeah.
They're sitting around amidst the confetti, and they're not talking about like, hey, this awesome player, this amazing. They're talking about the faith of the players on those teams. And so it's incredible. And national columnists are saying lives are changed, and this is different.
Yes.
And it's not Ohio State. It's not just Notre Dame who are wearing Bible verses and being outright and saying, like, I read an article on USA Today which Coach Day said, he goes, I was walking around and he goes, I see these guys huddling up in Bible studies in rooms around the field that I didn't even know we had. And so this is like real God's Spirit moving. And I see that regularly with FCA. Like I had some ONU basketball players saying, hey, we want to get FCA started here. And it's school after school saying, that I'm not going to recruit. They're saying, how can we bring this to our school? There's a need, or I want to lead. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. What can we do to bring this here? because kids are responding. And I can't explain it except by God's Spirit's doing it.
Yeah, how exciting. What an exciting time to be a part of it. All the things that God's doing. It is great. So let's talk a little bit more about the camps, because we have now, I mentioned I'm a sports mom. I have daughters who went to FCA camp, leadership camp. I have a daughter who participated as a counselor, taught volleyball, all those kind of things. There's a little bit of everything, but the All Abilities Camp, which takes place in Coldwater in the summer, is still in Coldwater, is that right? In the summertime, is a really great, unique opportunity, not only for attendees, but also for volunteers to get involved. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. So that's going to be June 6th and 7th in Coldwater. And to me, it's an amazing opportunity because high school kids, middle school kids get to come in there and be buddies to our friends with folks with with all abilities.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they get to go and serve. And so we get to run sports camps and stations and at the same time share the love of God with those participants and their families. And so to me, I love that aspect of the ministry because when you're pouring into that group, it's like we're not pouring in because there's something we're going to get back. We're pouring in just like Jesus shows us. It's like this love that we just want to show because God showed us love first.
I really love the FCA camps just through the experiences my own children have gone through, and then seeing, like I say, both from the camper standpoint and the counselor standpoint, because both sides come away just with so much. You have the fun of sports, you have the excitement of competition, but overall you have that message of Jesus, which just permeates through everything. You see that in everything FCA does. That message of Jesus is I was going to say it's the bottom line. It's the only line, really, in the end.
Right, exactly. And pardon me for using another sports illustration. We do that a lot with FCA, but I heard this once, and I share it a lot with kids, where there's a dad in a football stands watching his son receive a punt. And so the punt comes up, and his son goes to receive it, and he kind of bobbles it, and then he jukes to the left, and then he gets decked. And he loses 7 yards, and the dad's looking out there and saying, "Did you see that? That's my son. Did you see that amazing move he just made?" And we get to say, that is how the God of the universe sees you. He knows your name. He loves you. He cares for you. And he gives you purpose. And he gives you life. And you are significant. The God that put the stars in the sky knows you and has a plan for you. And so we get to share that. And I have an opportunity to share that with high school kids that I don't know. And I got to speak at a high school event that my kids were at. And I look out there, and you know what I know? I know these kids individually because my kids go to school there. I know the anxiety. I know the ones that are struggling. I know the ones who lost a parent. I know the ones who are battling sickness, who have financial trouble. And I look out and I'm like, there's so much pain here that only Jesus can fix. Sports can't fix it. But sports can be that avenue where they get to hear about it. And they say, you know what? We all want love. We all want attention. We think we get that in sports. But it's going to be empty because sports can't love you back. The only person that can love you back is the creator of the universe and Jesus.
That's right.
And so we get to share that and say, this is why you feel this way. This is why you feel that separation. Because there is a real sin, and that's what Jesus came to do. He came to die for you and to rescue you. And I read a quote from Travion.
Travion Henderson?
Yeah. And he used those exact words. He was like, right after the championship game when he's announcing, he's like, God rescued me. And he goes, I'm thankful that God gave us a national championship. What I'm most thankful for is Jesus and his love for us and the transformed lives. And he's looking at the transformed lives from his teammates. And then they use that to say, we can go and impact the Ohio State campus because we're put up on this pedestal. Last year, we had one of the captains of Ohio State speak at Wapak High School. 300 or 400 kids came, and he's sharing his testimony. If he wasn't an Ohio State football player, we would not have 400 kids that would just arrive on a Wednesday night to hear someone share the gospel.
I love it, folks. I love it. You've watched our station. We have sports on the station, and I know some of you don't always love the sports, and I get it. We'd love to just have ministry shows all the time, but when we see the ministry opportunities through sports, it is just so exciting. You said there's a revival happening, and FCA is a part of it. FCA is in the schools. It's in the schools locally. You can go to the FCA website. You can find out more information. But bottom line is FCA is a volunteer, I would say, well, it's a volunteer-driven organization, but it's also a donation-driven organization. So let's talk about that. How can people get involved, both personally, both financially? How does all that work?
Well, thanks for asking.
I know none of us love to talk about that part. I mean, I stand up on TV and have to do the same thing for
Sure.
the station as well. But
well, it's basically the body of Christ comes together to make sure this happens. There's no like money tree in the sky. It is all locally supported. And so there'll be local churches. Like in an hour from now at St. Mary's High School, one of my volunteer board members is dropping off Bibles at a local huddle, a meeting where kids are going to be speaking. Hey, they need extra Bibles. So a church says, hey, we'll go in and buy those Bibles. There was just local churches that said, we care about the kids in this community. How can we help them? And so a church donated Bibles for the St. Mary's, and somebody's delivering those today. And so churches come and step up, local businesses. We're mostly sponsored by individuals who say, we care about what you're doing and can we get on board and do this? And so when that happens, we don't, like you said, it is majorly volunteer driven. There is very, very few FCA staff people. We equip volunteers, which is different than almost any other ministry. It's one staff person and there might be several hundred volunteers working with it, which is crazy. And so, so we have a banquet actually coming up. Once a year we do a celebration and fundraising banquet. We're going to do it here in Lima, Shawnee. And so we raise funds there. There's opportunities for people to become monthly sponsors or their business to become a sponsor of one of our events or one of our camps. We run marriage retreats for coaches to get them away and to pour into those coaches. And so we give scholarships to those coaches so they can go away with their spouse and get away from the pressure of sports and invest in them so they can lead those kids later.
What a wonderful thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so when you invest in one or two coaches, you invest in a whole school.
Oh yeah, what a good thing to remember. Investing in a coach, spin off investing in the players and the students that they're going to have a relationship with. That's great.
And so we do coaches huddles with just coaches. And a friend of mine is he's the coach of Marion Local, Tim Goodwin. And he is not only their
little successful, mildly successful coach there.
High school, God's given him, but he was in a Fellowship of Christian Athletes Bible study where he got to get together with other coaches and study the Bible. And he's used his position not as a football coach, but he's also a principal. And he currently has the nation's longest high school football winning streak. He's won like 64 games in a row. Who knows how many state championships, 13, 15, who's counting anymore?
We've got them all. We don't have them all, but right here on the station, we can watch it.
And he would know, that's one place you can volunteer is, do you know a coach? Do you know someone who loves Jesus in that school? And so that would be him. And so he gets to one morning a week, he gets together with 50 kids in his school, not as a coach, not as a principal, but as someone that opens the Bible up and says, all this success that we have, nothing is comparable to knowing this.
Wow. All the success that we have, nothing is comparable to knowing this. Knowing Jesus is the ultimate success in life. All right, you can see on the screen information on how to reach out to Carl and to get more information on FCA. Of course, you can always contact us here at the TV station as well, and we will make sure that we connect you and get all your questions answered and connect you if you'd like to support the organization. Carl, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for saying yes to God all these years, everything you've done. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Carl is the FCA director in Northwest Ohio, covering the following counties: Allen, Auglaize, Mercer, Darke, Shelby, Logan, Hardin, Hancock, Seneca, Putnam, and Van Wert. Need to hear all of those again? Well, you can learn more about FCA in this region and all of those counties by visiting district8fca.org. And at that website, you can also learn more about the area huddles, how to become a financial supporter, special events, and opportunities to become involved. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching this edition of In the Community. Call us with any questions on this episode or any others. I'm Jennifer Beck.